any available seat because we're going to set additional tables up when we run out of seats. We just didn't know how many people were going to come. Thanks very much.
Did you want chairs here to block this? Is that what you were doing? Oh, okay. Okay. No, I got it. Just pulled it too fast.
minute warning now to find a seat, please. And then we can decide if we need another table set up.
I think we need a couple more spots, probably up front, too. Looks like there's some spots.
Spots over here.
A couple spots there. Yeah, so I'll put a mat here. There's 3 spots out there. Okay, okay, you're on there.
Okay.
All right, it looks like almost everybody's found a seat. There's 2 more seats over here that I can see. Those looking right up here in front. Just let us know. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm Sarah Fox, and I'm going to have all of the staff just raise your hand because tonight, as we're doing our whole activity, and you have a question, you kind of know who to look for. And pretty much we're all wearing City of Camas name tags, so we're kind of obvious to you that we're also the ones not sitting at tables. The bathrooms, they are located just to the right of me. There's a kind of arts sign right next to there's a theater there, so there's bathrooms there. And there's also, if you're going to go back down this hallway to the right, there's another set of bathrooms. We also have, for those that may not be able to stay for the entire exercise, and you might have just some questions, immediate questions, we have staff located at a table right here to my left. There's a little Q&A table, so if you just need to step away and ask a question, we have staff that's going to be sitting there the whole entire time. And then we also have some handouts out there at that table, some snacks, and I think that's it for kind of the orientation for the evening. And we're about ready to get started. We're going to have some opening comments by our mayor. And then we'll come back to the rest of the presentation.
Thank you. First, thank you everyone for coming out. This is something that I'm passionate about. I think it's extremely important. I know it's extremely important to all of you, and it requires everyone to come together to figure out how we're going to develop and what the community is going to look like in the future. I also want to thank the teams and the staff that again, I see a lot of behind the scenes, how much work they put into it, how much time they spend with the community and educating and understanding it, and I truly appreciate this. I'm sure all of us do, the hard work that you guys do. And then thank you to the landowners as well. They've been wanting to be part of this decisions as well, or to kind of work with us as we try and develop and understand what we're doing. So I think that's an important group as well. I'm looking forward for Sarah to kind of go through. I think you're going to do a little bit of a presentation and then explain how this visioning process of this step 1 is. And then afterwards, we're going to have some questions. I'll be able to answer any questions. Phil will answer any questions. So if there's any questions, we will be happy to take those afterwards. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it back here.
All right. So just a few warm-up questions for the group. How many people here showed up at our forum in November? Wonderful. That helps a lot. And who attended the short course on last Thursday? Wonderful. Okay. So for those of you that didn't attend the forum in November, we held a forum that basically we just allowed everyone who wanted to show up and ask questions about land use planning to show up, ask as many questions as they wanted to of staff. We had leaders from every one of our departments there to answer questions. We stayed for about 4 hours. We left at like 10:30 that night, and we stayed until every question could be answered that evening. And we hope that what we had left that night with was a better understanding of land use planning in Camas and the history of planning, the history of Camas that evening. And then the short course that was held last Thursday was a course that was offered by the Department of Commerce. And they covered the legal aspects of planning. They also provided information on the Public Meetings Act and the Public Records Act, and all of their training is available online too if you're still interested in learning more about that. And then my last question is, how many people have visited the North Shore's website? So tonight, the presentation, the materials that we have on the table, all of the material that we've been collecting throughout this process is available on our website. Staff can also send these materials to you as well if you want to reach out. My card is in the back there if you wanted to pick up my card and reach out to me individually. So that's just another little update. So what we've been working on so far is what we call phase 1. And what we've been focusing on is gathering feedback in as many ways as possible from our community. So we gathered feedback from what we call stakeholders, property owners, the public. We've been at a lot of events and gathering all this information. We put it in documents along the way to just check in. And ultimately, at the end of tonight, we'll gather this information from the maps and from what you'll provide to us, and we'll put it into a draft, what we call a draft vision document, and we'll bring it in front of our planning commission and our city council, and we'll get the feedback and fine-tune it further. And then at the end, the hope is that this vision document will be adopted by resolution by our city council. And then that will be kind of the starting point for phase 2. Now we'll have a vision to work and basically put together what the real planning from the North Shore, where we build on goals and strategies to achieve that vision. All right, so background. So why do we plan? I'm going to only spend a few minutes on covering some of the background materials because, as I noticed, the majority of you have been following along this process and are pretty much up to speed on all of this. So, but for those of you that might just want a refresher too, I'll go over this basic information on the Growth Management Act. And the reason we're showing it as a triangle is because we are under this umbrella of the Growth Management Act in the state of Washington. And all cities in the state of Washington need to plan for our current population and our future population. And it calls for us to review our comprehensive plans every 8 years. And the reason that they even created the Growth Management Act was motivated by immense traffic issues and problems that they're having, mostly up in the Puget Sound area. They were losing farmland, there was a lot of impacts in critical areas, and so that the Growth Management Act grew out of that, the concerns for all of this that was happening. And so what we're left with the Growth Management Act is 14 goals. And those 14 goals cover things like providing enough housing for your population, the transportation of the network, and it's all about coordinating growth. And it's also about protecting, especially our critical areas, from development. And then, as I was mentioning, the next step kind of under that umbrella is our comprehensive plan for the city of Camas. We've presented in earlier presentations kind of the steps along the way that we've had of previous comprehensive plans. But under this comprehensive plan, it includes the goals, even specific goals for the North Shore area. And it says to encourage master planning that allows a more intense level of development, well served by transportation options, and includes facilities for pedestrian and bicycle travel, a range of housing choices, and a mix of shop services and public spaces. And within that goal, there's several policies to go along with that goal. And sub-area plan. So the next step along the way is the sub-area plan, and we've mentioned this before, but it's an optional process, it's an optional element of all of our comprehensive planning. And what it looks at is a specific area of town, or a specific area, just to generalize. And this plan is unique to that specific area, and it can have specific, unique zoning regulations, design regulations for that area. But it's supposed to really respond to the needs of the community. Why do we plan? To evaluate existing conditions, reallocate land uses to best meet the city's needs. And it's all about planning for what we want to happen, not react to what we don't want to happen. All of our comprehensive plan is a 20-year plan. So it's looking out 20 years and saying, what do we want this city to look like? Our community needs to provide ourselves the best chance for managing our future. So the North Shore, one thing so this map that we see up there is just showing on the North Shore, talking about looking to the future. When the city annexed in 2007, ever since then the city's been acquiring property for parks, and it's all in this long-term goal of having that continuous trail network. And so this map shows the proposed trail networks connecting to the existing trail networks. It's also showing of what the areas of land that are already set aside, or we hope to someday set aside as well. And then the North Shore area, so what is it? It's about 800 acres. And we've mentioned throughout that the boundary is not set in stone. We're identifying an area that we've been hearing a lot of feedback from the public so far that seems to be pretty accurate as what everyone imagines is what we would consider the North Shore. About 270 of those acres are publicly owned. That's not all city-owned land, that includes county land. And then the remainder is private property. And then why the North Shore? This question's been asked quite often, actually, over the last few months. This graphic that I'm showing is actually from our comprehensive plan. And in our 2016 comprehensive plan, we identified other sub-areas in the city. And the reason we identified these areas is because the city's leaders decided that these particular areas had their own characteristics, and they would like someday to do further planning in those areas, that perhaps those areas do elicit more fine-tuning on zoning, perhaps, or shifting of the land uses there. And the North Shore was the area this year that council, not this year, we're at 2020 now, but in 2019, when council was considering which sub-area to begin work on, they analyzed all their choices and decided to move forward with the North Shore. A few of the reasons for choosing the North Shore was the change in ownership. The fact that we have moved forward so successfully in acquiring 100 acres over this last year was one of those reasons. It's also because the city now has 100 acres, we need to rebalance that acreage. The city's plan for most of that acreage is to put it into parks, trails, and the current zoning on that land is housing or commercial. So we need to really look at what do we need out in that area absent those areas now that are being set aside for open space. All right, I went pretty fast, and here we go. Steve will take it from here.
Thanks, Sarah. We just wanted to, before we dive into where we do a lot more listening to you than talking, kind of report back to you on what we've heard through the outreach that we've done over the past 5 months or so that Sarah mentioned earlier. And you can see the list up there of the different activities that we have been at, or events that we've been at, and activities that we've held over the past 5 months. We've really done 2 rounds of outreach. The first one started in September and extended into October. We talked to a number of people through stakeholder interviews and these broader community conversations at some school events and a farmer's market. And we also did the first of 2 online surveys, which we got 583 responses. So, first of all, thank you all for however you participated in this process. It really helps us understand what direction we want to go. After that, we got so many responses from that first survey, we decided to do another round of outreach. Sarah mentioned the community forum. We did a workshop with high school students at Discovery High School and did a second online survey that another 600 plus people responded to. All the information from all the outreach that we've done can be found online on the project website. It'll be posted tomorrow, I believe, the most up-to-date information. Tonight, I just want to talk a little bit about that round 2 outreach. So one of the things we did was went to Discovery High School and did an exercise similar to what you're going to do tonight. Nicole's going to come up here and describe it in just a minute. But you can see by the way the different colors are arranged that we had students focusing on or showing different preferences for what they wanted to see happen in the North Shore area. That first map shows a really quite a mix of where uses are located, where the second one shows a lot of residential closer to the lake, and blue industrial uses kind of pushed back further to the north and east. We had a total of 6 groups. In this third group, very structured, a lot more in terms of where they wanted the uses. A mix of housing. They identified a new high school in their map. And group 4 showed a new elementary school in their map and really focused on wanting to see parks near houses and businesses. We had 2 more groups. Group 5, again, really segregated the uses compared to some of the other groups, keeping residential with residential, commercial with commercial, and industrial off to the east. And then finally, group 6, dispersed business areas, larger areas for housing. A lot of the groups had a lot of trails and parks. And so we wanted to show this to you so you just have an idea of what we're going to be asking you to do tonight. So the 623 people that took that second online survey, the first question was, what land uses are most important to provide in the North Shore? And the most popular answer by quite a bit was recreation and tourism. That was followed by, to a lesser degree, small shops and businesses, moderate income housing, and restaurants. Another question we asked was about parks and public spaces and what types of parks and public spaces people wanted to see. Again, natural areas and trails, scored the highest by quite a bit, followed by water access to the lake, a larger community park, which I believe we defined as up to 5 acres, and passive open space was a popular one as well. The third question we asked was what types of jobs would be ideal for this area to keep more jobs in Camas. And this was not quite as varied as some of the other questions, but tech jobs, the technology sector was the highest rated, followed by medical and office jobs. Again, the range was much I'm sorry, I forgot to change the slide. You can see the range goes from about 2.5 to 4.5, so the desired types of jobs were much more clustered together than clear favorites as in some of the other questions. So the final question we asked was just what other comments do you have and want to share about the North Shore? And we had hundreds and hundreds of comments, so we took those and put together one of these word clouds that shows the words that appeared most frequently in those answers. And I think you see things that echo the results of the other questions of the survey. Preserving natural areas, parks and trails, commercial space, looking at traffic and walkability and job diversity. So a real array of thoughts and opinions on what people want for the future of North Shore. So that was kind of a quick snapshot of this round 2 of outreach, but we have from round 1 and round 2 identified some themes in what we have been hearing from the community, and I'll just walk through those really quickly right now. A lot of people saying, don't develop this area, we really want to keep it rural or natural. People wanting to incorporate more parks and green space, especially around the lake, like Sarah talked about earlier, and we saw that in the student maps as well. People want to see development happen in a way that preserves trees, and views, and habitat. They want to minimize traffic impacts. We heard a lot of concern about what developing the area will do in terms of traffic. But people also want to make sure that we're being safe as we plan for the future of the area. Like with traffic and transportation roads, people want to make sure that we're planning for needed schools and infrastructure as we go through this process. Incorporating bike paths, we heard a lot about walkability and bikeability, and we talked about the trails earlier. People want to see a lot of different modes of being able to get around the area. There was definitely a preference for local businesses and local serving businesses as opposed to, one of the options we gave people was shopping centers or larger commercial centers. People definitely preferred local, smaller types of shops. Not as much on employers. People didn't care as much about what types of employers Camas would try to attract, but really very concerned that these employers do not impact the environment, especially concerned about the lake and what might run off down to the lake, and also not wanting just unattractive industrial development that's going to hurt the aesthetics of the area. And then finally, another common phrase was people really wanted to just make sure that development happens at a slow pace so that the city can adapt and maintain the small town feel that Camas enjoys today. So with that, we want to jump into an exercise where we hear more from you, like that student exercise, and Nicole's going to kind of lay the groundwork for that.
Hi, everybody. So everybody's now seated at tables with a variety of materials. So I'm just going to go through what those materials are, and then we'll ask staff to raise their hands again, and we'll be roaming around the room so you can ask specific questions about the exercise too as they come up throughout. Yeah.
A question and answer session be appropriate now to clarify before we do the exercise instead of after?
Well, we really want to make sure we have time to get to this exercise, and there was a lot of the Q&A that happened at that forum that Sarah mentioned in November. And so I think some of those clarifying questions can happen at the individual tables, and then we'll have time to clarify further after the exercise through that open Q&A, and we'll be here as long as you need.
And do you want to make that decision, or did you want to put it to the room?
And Robert's raising his hand back there. Yeah.
If you want to come talk with me now, feel free. Philbert, whether it be the director and I are going to be available along with you. If you want to get some additional side
We could have tendency to go to the side of the room and have private conversations. It's probably something that people that I've spoken to or hopefully kind of get away from. So again, maybe you guys want to make that decision sitting around the room, or do you want to put it up to the citizens?
So I'll say at the end, we'll answer any questions.
In 30 minutes.
So we feel we'll spend
Before the
In
exercise?
30 minutes. We're going to do the exercise, and then we'll have time for everyone to stay.
You're going to use the results of the exercise. Then I'll photo this and you have the vision more.
the end of the address
This is just part of the vision.
Yes, so you don't want to put it still? Ready for the sign?
If we could too, it's hard for everybody to hear just through some of these side conversations. So let me just explain the exercise, and then there'll be staff around to give further explanation. And like we said, there'll be plenty of time for Q&A at the end too. We'll all come back together and have that Q&A at the end. So the materials that you have in front of you, you have a base map, that has a green hatch over it that includes the land that the city has purchased, and that land will likely be identified for parks.
No, I was just saying at the end, we will answer all the questions. We'll make sure that we keep it timely. I think this is phase one of the project that we're trying to get to, so I think there's benefit we kind of go through the process, and then afterwards we'll be happy to answer any questions in regards to the entire process as well, or any specific questions when it comes to North Shore. Any questions in general at all? Sound good, Phil? Everyone?
So the purpose of this tonight is to start this visioning process. So are people interested in continuing on with this visioning process right now? Can I see a raise of hands?
I don't know if that's the question, Phil. I would suggest we stop the process. I was saying we have the question and answers in the community discussion.
Sure. So now let me, since this is our meeting, let me control that, okay?
Yeah.
So now, would people like to just stop what we're doing right now and have a question and answer session? Can I see a raise of show of hands? Okay, so I see the vast majority of people here are saying let's continue. Okay?
All right, so back to the materials on the table. So we have the base map with the green hatch that identifies the city-owned parcels. Those are likely identified as parks, so that's why they have a green hatch over them. In your bag, little Ziploc bag, you have a series of Post-it notes and some dots and 2 markers. So the Post-it notes are in different colors, and all of this is also written on your kind of instructions and directions sheet as well, so you can kind of follow along here. But you have 14 blue Post-its, which those represent office, business park type uses. Then you have 6 red Post-its. Those would represent commercial uses. You have 5 orange Post-its. Those represent multifamily, like apartments. And then you have 15 yellow Post-its for single-family houses. Then you have 4 dots, red dots, that would represent smaller commercial nodes. And then you have 9 green dots, which would represent parks. So the idea is that you use all of the Post-its that you have. The use of dots is optional. The use of dots can be layered on top of the Post-its and the other land use colors. But again, and then the black marker is to identify roads throughout the area. The green marker is to identify trails throughout the area. And again, the idea is to use all of the Post-its that you have in the form that they are in. You can layer them, you can write on them, so you can identify further, what your thoughts are. I would encourage you to nominate someone at your table to be the recorder and to begin to record your thoughts, because after the exercise, we'll ask each table to present to the group what they were thinking and the results of their mapping exercise. And then I think that pretty much covers the basics of the exercise. Again, can all staff raise their hands so that we can identify staff? We'll be floating around. So feel free to grab one of us and ask specific questions at the table. And yes, one extra thing I didn't say. So you are allowed to trade up to 3 Post-it notes from one color to another. So if you don't want that many blue Post-its, you can trade them for some yellow. If you don't want that many yellow, you can trade them for blue, vice versa. All right.
And so I would, that's, because I've been out for 30 years on Livingston, and I'm just seeing what's happening. And I'm a gamer, so I'm live on. I used to go down when I first got out. I moved up on 53rd. I had a couple of songs and going west of Woodland, there's someone that's tied up there. Water traffic is motivating people over the fourth lane. And then, have you ever tried to get out from Engel on the fourth lane?
I have not.
Okay, well, you've taken your life in your hands, because it is, because the east-west traffic on the fourth lane is just horrendous, and it's kind of a blind spot. It's a T intersection, and there's quite a few accidents on that. And there's also been like now by Cobestone, where there's been an accident and traffic was diverted. Back and we had to go back up to 257 around or going to good. And so I'm just thinking about if those they're at Green Mountain,
going to give you about 15 more minutes just to kind of give you a time check tonight.
About 7:35. What's that? Perfect, great.
I might grab a picture of you guys. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you guys. Have a great evening.
Got about 5 minutes left to get your stickers down. 5 more minutes, thanks.
spokesperson is going to be and just have a few notes. We'd like you just to try to give us a description of your map in like a minute, and then we're going to have all your maps posted over there on the easels. Okay, can everybody quiet down? All right, and because one thing is we can't carry this microphone around, but as I was mentioning, when you're done describing the work of your group, we're going to post all of your posters over there, and then when they're all posted, we will have you each get a few dots and go around and just let us know which ones you highly rate out of all of them that you've heard about tonight.
Okay, I'm the guinea pig, I guess. So when we were talking about a lot of the important ideas that can come out of this to keep Camas still feeling like Camas. So rather than having industrial areas that all the trees get clear cut, everything's just wiped out so it's a big industrial area, but also requiring some of those spaces to have green spaces so it's walkable. Also having the feel for the commercial spaces for restaurants and things like that that have views of the lake, but still have the feel of our downtown corridor with meandering sidewalks. Everything's slowed down, so it's not speeding through the area. Cottages was one of our ideas at the table there. To be able to have affordable housing is really important in our area. Being on the team was kind of fun because what's important to me, it was also important to everybody at the table, which is having places that people can afford to live in our town. We have a beautiful town, but it's also very expensive to live in our town. So the cottages, also we talked about senior living development in one of the areas because that's been brought up from time to time. And then also a swimming beach. That seemed to be very important at our table too, to have somewhere for kids to be, and also diverting some of the busyness of Camas Lake, the swimming area, the kayaking area, and bringing that around to the North Shore as well, and having a large area like that. Everybody?
Thank you. Table 2.
We are the rebels with a cause. We refused to use the Post-its. Well, I got notes down here. We have 3 major issues. Number 1, we would like to see City Council reconsider their focus on the North Shore. We don't have the same City Council now. We feel that we have a city council that better represents us than the past. Number 2, focus on mill property to address jobs and housing instead of the North Shore. And number 3, too much light industrial and or multifamily will have a major vehicle impact on the Everett corridor. You can't even handle what it's handling now.
Okay, table 3.
So Randall really should have been in group 2.
He's trying to move over there.
He played. So, thank you. We wanted to do everything we could to preserve the open area along the north shore of the lake, and so we foresee continuous parks through here, a couple of access points for for recreation to the lake, and then behind it, mainly residential. We think you should have apartments. One of the challenges in Camas is low-cost housing, and that is lower-cost housing. So we had it closest to existing downtown at the bottom, and up here near the new school. And then commercial and, what is the other thing? Commercial and good old business parks, kind of backing as far away as possible, with some centers and some new roads, some residential up by this high school. Yeah. Have a nice day.
All right.
So we had a a lot of discussion and like insider knowledge about sort of this general area with a lot of like parks and places that would make good trails and not very good housing, like big river or streams and stuff. And so we wanted to also preserve the sort of natural corridor around here with parks and some more like trails and things like that. Medium to low income housing around the schools and sort of behind the lake area, sort of over here like the last group. And also concentrating some of the like office jobs. We kind of went outside the area a bit here, but that's fun. Kind of near the airport, that's behind these sticky notes as well. We talked a lot about commercial centers along intersections of major roads, as well as kind of expanding like this road, that's 3rd, coming off of 500 to join in over here, make a little commercial center, sort of in this area where there wouldn't be like a lot of deforestation going on. Yeah.
All right, group 5.
The person who took most of the notes had to leave because they go to work at 5 in the morning. So one of the things, we didn't use all our posting notes. We weren't quite as rebellious as some, but we feel that it's important to have, again, the green space, but we didn't put the dots because it was already hatched there. We thought it would be nice to have a small, something for people who are parking to go to the thing, to go and get a snack before they're around the lake. Or we thought when we heard the swimming pool, that sounded really nice too. We'd like to have it walkable. We also talked about the fact that there's no bus access. That right now the only bus access is through downtown, which is down a big hill. So it would be nice to have a bus access through here, especially if you put in multifamily. We thought maybe townhomes would be a nice thing as well, that they're smaller and not take up as much footprint. We didn't want to cut down any of the trees. Sorry, she has really small handwriting. Please plan for traffic and as little deforestation as possible. We'd like to have benches and stuff for bird watchers in the wetlands area. Perhaps turning streets into one way to reduce traffic flow so that you're not. And then also small grocers like a Trader Joe's or something. Somebody mentioned Trader Joe's in our. And also just when you do have development, to keep the trees and not just clear cut everything. I know a lot of this has already been clear cut because it's farmland.
We're at 6. Hey, Don, you want to grab that?
Okay, so we were really looking at the front here. I mean, I think that we have such a gem over here in our big park, right? That we're out there hiking and everything. So we were really looking at taking any park that's currently forested and keeping it as part of the parks and trail system and the recreation that we were talking about. So we took liberties of using the marker to fill that in. And we recognize we need jobs in industry, and we thought it would be nice to have them as far away from any kind of environmental impact as possible, depending on what we have. We really thought that up here by the school, it would be nice to have some houses, some shops, some multifamily units, because when I look at us going forward, the opportunity we have to create
diversity in our community. I was totally shocked at seeing that we're 85% white, and we have no diversity, and I think we're really skipping the beat on that. So we have to have more affordable housing, whether it be high density, duplex, or even other creative housing. And also I want to make sure that we're not skipping the beat when it comes to, we have a certain age of population right now that's looking to downsize. And so families can come in and reoccupy those 5,000 square foot houses where the older folks, such as myself, I downsize and I highly recommend it. So, you know, to get in that multifamily unit, opportunities to downsize. So, yeah, mostly we're focusing in on the parks. And then I just wanted to add, and this wasn't really something we shared, when we're talking about bringing in creative housing, I mean, I think that we could probably we need stuff that builds community. So why aren't we putting in planned communities? Communities with housing around a central park. If you're a dog owner, maybe this community is a dog park in the middle. If you're a gardening person, maybe this community built around the open spaces of a big community garden. Maybe if you're a really active sports person, maybe this community is built around a big sports complex. They have them all over the place in Europe and Japan. So, I mean, that's when we talk about developing the housing, I hope we're looking at planning communities, not just build, because we totally skipped the beat by putting in so many single family housing. If we keep putting in family housing for the average Camas citizen, which is white 40 and makes $100,000, we're never going to create diversity, right? We're going to totally blow that one. So, you can take the girl out of corporate, but you can't take the corporate out of the girl.
Wanting to retain a nice broad swath of parkland, keep the trees. If they're already there, don't cut them down with those little matchsticks that they do in the development. Keep the trees, and then keep put the housing along the road, which makes perfect sense. Do light business, restaurants. I mean, we lost a really great treasure with the Lakeside Chalet. Camas could really use a nice family type dining place where you can go for a run in the morning and then grab a coffee afterwards, with your friends. So there's good places for that over here. Another one over here by the school. Moms, you guys drop your kids off at school. You want to get a coffee afterwards. It's just, that's a really good fit for that. And then again, keep we have so much land. We don't have to concentrate industrial and office parks right here where we will have room in the future to put those things closer to where the bigger roads are, like where SR 500 is. You already have existing big busy roads. Concentrate the development around the big busy roads. And then also another thing that we saw that I've been wanting to do for a long time, anyone who's ran or ridden their bikes along the Burnt Bridge Creek Trail in Vancouver, we've got this great EPA trail that it would be so cool if we could develop that into a multi-user trail that would connect to high school. Hello, high school's right here. Imagine being able to free up kids being able to walk or ride their bikes to school. I mean, that would be so cool. So it would be nice to have that trail to connect the Camas High School area and up to the northwest side. So that was another idea. So I drew in the trail where I saw the line there. So I think that's pretty much it for ours.
I'm thinking is this dairy park. When I used to go to school here last year, it was a great place for elementary kids, and every morning I would ride my bike to school and just seeing in the morning, just going to school, walking in the field, just seeing Mount Hood and just seeing all, and I heard that I actually had some deer on the very bottom of the fences. Some deer were up there, and some of the teachers told me. And I was thinking, oh, this fog in the morning and all these deer. And if we put houses up there, we're going to see more animals moving in towards our community, and we're just basically pushing animals out with us building more houses. And I think we should keep more of our animals in trees, because we've been tearing down more trees than we should be. With this dairy, lots of it is trees and just putting more houses and more houses in industrial, and it's really not, yeah, it's just not.
Common theme here coming from most of us is we really focus a lot on keeping the National Trail along the river, taking nothing to take those views away from all the way up. So as you see, we kind of left this whole area open to try to expand the trails, the parks, and be able to kind of walk through that whole area and not take down any trees. That was probably our #1 concern at the table, is keeping all the green spaces there. The other idea that we incorporated is trying to keep a little bit of the housing and all this kind of commercial close so people could access into town, because downtown Camas is not that far, and we're trying to instill more walking as opposed to people driving and taking their vehicles down, keeping them where they can walk to the distance. So we wanted to put a little bit of some affordable housing. Maybe there already is some homes there, but homes where people will be more like, I don't need the car, I can walk to Camas. I work at the industrial park, I live here, I walk to town. Hoping we would get less cars than more cars was the idea of this concept. It may not work, but it's kind of how we get people living in their communities. The other thing we really love, somebody else shared this, is using that green space as a bird sanctuary, or having a place, there's a beautiful one down there in Washugo, having a place where we can kind of walk and enjoy all the beauty of the wetlands, because you can't do much else. But the natural habitat is fantastic there. And then we kind of intermixed up here by the high school, again, trying to put we wanted all the industrial to kind of be up high, where we would have it maybe where it would be less visible from the lake, but having some light industrial, bringing in, again, a lot of little mini commercial, what I would call little hubs, like a little cafe, like the Lakeside Chalet, or a little coffee house, where the industrial and even the residentials and schools all have access. And I guess the last piece is we kind of really consolidated a lot of the homes down here and left this almost open to be able to have a lot less cutting of trees. So, thank you.
All right, group 9.
Okay, group 9, we used all of our sticky notes. Starting from the north, we thought we'd slip in a little multifamily next to the school with a big park there. That buffers it from the business park area. The business park, that area lends itself well to the business park zoning code because of the large parcels of open space, and it also provides a buffer for the airport. Can't forget about the airport. Nobody's going to build houses in this area. Matter of underneath that airport area. The Rose property is likely to be tied up by the city, so that's parks, we hope. Moving on down, little multifamily here, which is the Mills family, follows current zoning. Farther down, single family housing, which is the CJ Dent's property, follows current zoning. And then we put in some commercial along SR 500, and then single family housing along SR 500 and near the high school.
Group 10. We have a spokesperson. We have a group 10.
All right, Danny.
Just a quick count. Is 16 the highest number we have out there, or do we have a higher number than 16? Anyone have 17 as a map? No? Okay, we're almost there, everyone.
So we didn't use all our stickers here. We really were concerned about adding a whole lot of single-family homes, but we do understand that we do have to add some. Tried to keep, one of the things that I guess really hits us is that Camas is, we call ourselves a city, but it's like a city with none of the conveniences of being in a city. You know, I think of a city as I can walk down to a store or a coffee shop or a market or something like that. So we tried to put some of that inside of our plan here. And areas where there's already multifamily housing, we kind of built along this road here and then make it so it's walkable. One of the things that we want to make sure that Camas has is bike lanes, walking lanes, because right now the way it is there's a bike lane and it just stops. You know, it's crazy, it doesn't make any sense. So we want to make sure that that goes not just here, but comes all the way through here. Really anywhere where we're going, bike lanes. This is going to be a major problem. We're putting in all these homes and businesses, and there's really only a couple of ways in. So that needs to be addressed. So I don't know if this will help us reach the GMA targets. Kind of our thought is that that's why we've got elected officials. We expect them to go to our state legislators and say, no, we're not going to make it to 35,000, sorry. We're going to do this. We're going to do our best to make a livable city, lots of trees, and lots of walkable, livable space. One of the models that we'd like to follow is up in Battleground, just south of their city center. I think it's called Battleground Village or something like that. But that's a nice little model where they've got some multi-family homes, they've got, I think, a community center, they've got some shops and a library and things like that. Kind of follow along that model.
Group 11.
We're rural. Savannah White. We're rural followers, so we tried to get all of them in. But our brand of Camas is we're a small mill town that's growing, and we have a lot of wealth, and then a lot of people that are coming up. And so we do have to accommodate for different levels of income, but we have the best schools, and we've had some natural changes that are happening. And some of that is like in our downtown is becoming more dense and really active and a fun destination for people from Portland to come to. And then also, we're kind of getting this resort feel at our lake.
And a good planning would optimize those natural movements. And so in this area, having some services and the restaurant and having a accessible place, this is a theme, is that we're all concerned about the traffic coming in and getting in there. So obviously, the number 10, they said that about Olympia and all the pressure, but we're Camas. We can handle this. We don't have to be what they tell us to be. So when we look at this, what we really enjoy is the trail and the walking trails, and I think that's a theme, and the trees along the way. So we tried to make it low density into high density. But one concept that had been thrown around, we like the whole walking trail. I would love it all the way around. And have this area by the school, it's already a natural habitat there. I paddleboard through all the lily pads, and not to impact that, but to keep it a little more natural and create less of a thoroughfare down here, but maybe the road up here that's planned is a good one, but have it be a healthy road with access down to the lake. And so perhaps this is a walk trail, and that marina that's already down there, we were thinking this would be a really cool, that you can drive to this area and maybe have a marina, maybe a little bed and breakfast or some kind of services right down here so people can drive up, have a good time, put boats in, put, whatever they're called, skidoos, and that would be an active center, but then have housing that's low density that comes into high density, and then maybe a tech center or something that's easy to access from SR. What is that road? 503? Yeah, 500. So, did I miss anything?
The other thought we had is, as we looked at all of this, we had lots of fun discussions, and we put lots of other things around, and it suddenly hit us that, what pays for all those open spaces are property taxes. And we didn't have enough yellow in there for homes to help fund all the delightful open spots that we did want. How do you pay for it? If none of us have to write the check, we want it all and it'd be delightful. But so we went back in and put a lot more yellow single-family homes, because ultimately it's the property taxes that fund the roads, the services, and the open spaces we needed. So then we acknowledged those high-dollar homes are going to pay the high-dollar taxes, and they're going to want views of the lake, and so we added more yellow in.
Yes, the beat count. Group 12.
I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, but we are recording this whole meeting as well as taking notes off the side as well. So just to let you know the multiple ways we're capturing your thoughts.
Like many others, we wanted to preserve trees that are along the lake here, especially with these large parcels that already have a lot of old trees on them. We're really hoping that the city could acquire those. And we wanted to create a greenbelt trail from a lot of the houses that are over here that will ultimately connect to the school and all the residential development here. And the other thing that we wanted to really focus on was getting the heavy industrial commercial and the truck traffic all the way up north, where it won't impact the road, it won't impact views from the hill, and it's not going to be funneled down to the bottleneck. So everybody, the heavy truck traffic, commercial traffic will be able to catch 500 and only go to 205. So we are a little outside the bounds here, but we're hoping in a future annexation that could be possible. We also have some by the airport, since this is generally an undesirable area for housing, so it would make sense having it next to the airport. And the other thing is, with this future road, we wanted to have offices, restaurants along this road that would be walkable to a lot of the houses, and then it would also have access to a lot of the green space that is adjacent to it. Along with putting multifamily next to that road, and the multifamily would ideally be attractive development for people who don't want a yard, and they would also have access to the trails and the green space. So we're meeting the density requirements while still giving people access to nature. We really wanted to stay away from single-family homes, especially the high-dense tracts. And Charity had a wonderful idea for this area in here that she'd like to elaborate on.
I was very happy not to be laughed out of the table, and that was really my only goal in coming here. So this has really been fun, guys. But I was thinking in this area where the dairy is, the way it's zoned now is when that dairy sells, it's zoned commercial, I believe, and so it would have to, if it was changed use to commercial, would have to go to that and could not revert back. And my thought is to have a cluster, either a planned community or 5-acre lots where there's specialty farming, traditional farming. That would tie in with a lot of survey results, with a lot of the resort feel of the lake, making this a destination for people in Portland and beyond. I think that we have the community attitude. The Camas Farmers Market is crazy popular in the Valley, that would support small orchards and wineries and goat cheese farms and things that would just make this place really cool. Right, 13. Oh, you're already on your way.
So we chose to, working off the schools, cluster the residential around the schools to be able to provide an easy walkable distance to the schools for that. And then on this major arterial, we wanted to build off that. One of our group mentioned this could be 500, SR 500A cut off road connect up there eventually. And located along that would be more the business kind of center. Built underneath the airspace for growth, because you wouldn't want to locate residential underneath there. And then kind of along that route, cluster in some commercial activity. And then, as a lot of people have mentioned, this is a valuable area down here to locate some commercial with access to the lake. And then the multifamily should be sprinkled in here to provide low-income housing or affordable housing. With access to the schools as well as to the jobs and employment base. And then we also have a trail network delineated along the power lines here that could potentially tie back down to Bridge Creek with some parks sprinkled in.
Group 14.
We started by considering that Grove Field is not a good place to put houses in front of, so almost all the groups did the same, made the same choice. This is our light industrial area. Working with the assumption this is the new road that started here is going to be the main thoroughfare down connecting to Everett, and we put our commercial along the north side of that road, and then single-family housing along the south side, and some other light industrial here and there, and also used this area, single family, and some multifamily in this area. Some other highlights, interspersing parks here and there with generous use of trails going down to the lake. And that's what I've got. Mike, do you have anything to add?
Okay, just for your information, I live right out there. This airport is always flying over my house. I don't want them flying over other people's houses, especially if somebody doesn't quite make it, okay? So we put light industrial here, and in hopes that they build strong buildings. We put commercial along the road because, you know, it's going to be kind of like a little plane. That's where you're going to go to get your stuff. And I'd like to mention that I'd like the road to be named Johnson Road. Because Johnson's been a good neighbor to me for 44 years. Okay. We put the houses on this side because, you know, people are going to want to look at the lake. I mean, you look at the other side, they want to look at the lake. And so it's really a convenient place. All the green marks are parks in between the housing. All this area here is already designated as the park master plan, so we left it clear. We didn't go over here or anything like that because there are already houses over here, and they probably wouldn't like us building over. And then we mixed in the multi-housing because they need to be part of our neighborhood. So that's pretty much where we are.
Are we done? Do we have another group that hasn't reported? Oh, okay. Okay. What number are you guys? Come on up. All right. Come on up. So what other groups haven't reported? Do we have any other groups? Is this the last group? Are you shy?
I think we're all here because we care about this land so much. It's such a beautiful piece of land, it's such a beautiful area that we've all enjoyed for so many years. And the farm, the lake, all the green space is so beautiful. We don't want to see it being developed just as a good way that anything else is in. So I think we need to come up with we talked at the table, I think that we need to come up with a master plan for this area. So city set some guidelines for development that goes in. So the area is preserved as a nice area, and the development that goes in is a good development that raises the tax base for the city while creates a nice community for people to enjoy for so many years. The industrial can be along where the runway is here, where nobody wants to build any houses. And it can be pushed further north, so it's out of sight. This area, even though it's flat and it's a dairy farm right now, and it's meaning that use, possibly it's not the best idea to put the industrial over there for the future. But just creating a community where there is a mixture of commercial, the multifamily, and the single family is possibly the best use for this land. And we can create some kind of a commercial hub near the water where the trails are going to be. There are some cafes and restaurants over there for people to enjoy. But they're going to use the Everett corridor as the main commercial corridor here, along with some other hubs there, but mostly single family and multi-family. And either a school land next to the existing school if they need to do the high school here, or they can put some multi-family over next to the school so people are closer to the school. That's all right. That's what we would suggest.
Presenting your maps and our groups. Do we have anyone else that hasn't presented their maps? No? Okay, so now I think we're going to hand out some dots.
Yeah, we'll hand out 2 dots to everybody.
Thanks.
We'll hand out 2 dots to everybody, and then you just place your dot on one, or you can place both on one board, or separate them between 2 boards, which ones you like the best. So that's the next step. So we'll just hand out the dots over here by the boards. Everybody wants to make their way over.
Give you about 10 minutes for that. 10 minutes, and then we'll switch to the next part for those of you that want to stay for Q&A. So this last part is, please vote.
Born and raised out in this area now. I gave mine
those of you who are staying, those of you who are sitting at tables, are you staying for the question and answer portion of the night? All right, so we're going to start the question and answer portion in about 2 minutes. If you'd like to find the table, 2 minutes.
You are on my list of people that are working diligently.
It's been about 15 years.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time.
Yeah, we want North Shore to be an area that the whole city can be covered.
Well, it seems like you're getting all that land along the buffer along the lake and low density. It seems like it's already pretty well planned. And I don't know what property right at the end or my
Bill? Okay, and Robert? If you can make your way to the front. Okay. So the idea behind the question and answer portion for today is not for just me standing here answering questions, but we do have quite a lot of our staff here from our planning department, our engineering department, our parks department, so we do have a range of our other experts here to answer your questions. So maybe we can start off with
Hey guys,
who has
have
a
a good
question?
evening. Thanks again. Yeah.
You're here. Okay. You want to come up to the mic? I guess the portable mics were broken tonight.
I would like to find out what the general consensus is of the Lake Road when you're saying let it be green, let it be a green path, are we closing off the Lake Road so it's a walking path, bike path,
not a traffic road. Okay, yeah.
You're talking about Ledbetter Road. Yes. Do we want our Parks Manager to answer, or should I just answer it? Okay. So the plan for Ledbetter is generally that it will be shut down from cars, and it will be a trail, and it's been on that comprehensive parks plan for probably 15 years, at least 13 years now. And so the part of the parks plan recently is just looking at more detailed analysis of exactly where the road would stop, where they put a parking lot for cars so that the trail can continue. So that's been the current planning phases.
And I'll just add to that this isn't something that the city is just going to go out and shut down the road without alternative on Ledbetter Road. This is something that, as we do a deeper dive, as we continue to do our transportation planning, to make sure there's an accessible network of roadways out there that can accommodate the traffic that is currently using Ledbetter. Part of the concept with purchasing land on that North Shore and protecting the backdrop that has gone on, it is in purchasing these lands, for instance, the Ledbetter House and other properties, you minimize the need for access directly on it. And so over the years, the city's continued to work with different property owners to ensure access where it's necessary, but also to acquire the lands that we felt were necessary to protect the backdrop. So, any next question?
Bill, put the mic up to your mouth.
Like this, is it better? Okay.
Don't be afraid.
John, I'm sorry, it took me.
Just so people can hear, life is about choices, and what are the cost of those choices? So can you tell us what the cost of that choice is to shut down Ledbetter Road?
No, I cannot. That's the answer for it. No, I do not have a number for you.
But we're going to have to build a new road, so that is the consequence of that choice. What's that new road going to cost?
And actually, Curly, you might be able to address that. I think it was
Yeah, as I mentioned to John earlier, I don't know that number offhand. We can get you that number, though. We have a thumbnail amount for that roadway. We would also expect some of the growth that comes into the area to pay a good portion of that cost.
So what we're talking about is under the 2015 comp plan. There's a transportation plan that was associated with that. There is a number allocated to this road that would go through the North Shore, through the Johnson Dairy area. Those costs would get updated as time goes on as well, because what was looked at just a few years ago would be different today. It changes every year with the cost of materials, land, etc.
The question I have is about how you pay for infrastructure when you do new development. What can you require a developer to provide at their cost, and what ends up having to be borne by the city and ultimately the taxpayers of the community? For example, we've heard talks about a planned community with a nice recreation center. Last time I checked, we just voted down a not so nice recreation center in the eyes of most Camas residents. So how could we deal with something like that going forward?
I'll talk generally. I'll ask Curly to help out a little bit, but generally with each new development, what you can require them to do is improvements that are proportional to the impact that they're creating. So you have transportation studies that look at what are they going to do to the road network, what intersections need improvements, those kinds of things, and you can require them to do those improvements. What you cannot do, though, is require them to solve pre-existing problems. And so you can't have them pay for something that's not proportional to the impact they have. The city currently has a number of funding sources that we use for transportation improvements. Most of these funding sources are all determined at the state level. So there's grants, loans, there's your general taxes, there's impact fees. And so, for instance, each new dwelling that gets built in Camas has to pay a transportation impact fee, a park and open space impact fee, sewer system development charges, a variety of other fees associated with that. So a typical home, for instance, up in the Green Mountain area, I'm just taking one section of the city. For a typical home there, the amount of fees for a new home currently is about $28,000. That's not including your building permit fees. So that's what we do, and that includes transportation, water, sewer, open space, those kinds of things.
Thank you. I guess I first want to thank you, city staff, for providing us with this workshop, listening to us, and have the opportunity. We can share our ideas, even share our angers. My question is, what would be the next step?
Sarah, would you like to answer the question on next steps? I'll start it, and you can perhaps follow up on that. So the next steps is to take this information that's all been brought together, assimilate it. I'm sorry. The next steps would be to take all this information tonight, all the notes, everything that's come together, the record that's been brought together from the previous workshops, the frequently asked questions, bring that all together, start to put together themes in which our planning commission can deliberate on further and make recommendations to city council. Each step of the way, those will be public meetings. There will be opportunities to comment and participate. And if council comes up with a final vision, that's when the next stage would start. And that next stage would actually be working toward your policies, your goals, putting together a plan that's specific to that vision. So.
Not much to add. It's a really, like we said, when we put together this draft vision and plan, it will be available on our website. That's why I was glad to see that everybody knows where to find it. And so even tonight we were showing you some of our initial summaries, so you could see if it was starting to resonate with you as well. And so all of these methods are ways which you can continue to give us feedback as it evolves. And then when we get to City Council with this vision that has had so much input, please continue to participate and talk to your representatives.
I will add on that as well, is that this process is what we call legislative process. So it's going through the planning commission, makes recommendations to city council. Your city council is the one that makes decisions. At any step of the way, you can reach out to your city councilors. You can come to council meetings. You can send them emails. If you think there's something wrong with this process, that's the place to direct that. If you think it's something right with this process, you can also share that as well. Or show up to those meetings as we continue to move forward.
I don't have a mic to walk around this. Thank you, and I must admit I was a little dubious of this process, but thanks to our rebels at Table 2, I hope our new mayor and our elected officials see that the most yellow dots are on a map that suggests our vision be expanded to include the whole city and the planning be done for the whole city and not just the North Shore.
Then I'm going to go. There you go.
All right. So
capability to regulate development based upon environmental factors, like risk to the environment? Because mostly what I'm thinking about is because like everyone knows like Lacamas Lake is kind of gross. And the reason it is gross is because runoff from like both farms and like fertilizer people put in their yard gets into the lake. Algae eats the fertilizer, it grows, it dies, and then so we have massive algal blooms, and then the dying algae sucks all the oxygen out of the lake, so it can't support its own fish ecosystem. So can the city say no to proposed development that would provide too much, make too much of a risk to the environmental factors? And does the city have a plan to improve the health of the lake in the future?
I can address the part about the lake, but as far as develop the whole impetus of our Growth Management Act was about the environment. So we have environmental regulations in place today. We have environmental regulations in place in which any development that comes before us, it's called, one of the umbrellas is called the State Environmental Policy Act, which is SEPA. So there's a checklist that's a general checklist that looks at everything from air quality, water, what is it going to do to housing. It has this checklist that for every development we have to review the impacts of that development based on this list. So that's one of the ways that we look at a new development when it comes into the city. And then we also are looking at that individual property itself, where it might have a wetland on the property or a stream running through it. And the city has regulations to protect that wetland or that stream, saying that development can't be any closer than 100 feet to that, whatever that is. Or if we have regulations to protect our steep slopes and our fish. And so we do have regulations to take a look at protecting those resources for every development.
And I'm going to hand this over to Curly, and I want to put him on the spot, but basically there's requirements for stormwater, so all new developments, the water has to be collected, the rainwater hits the roofs, the impervious surfaces, your roadways, your driveways, those kinds of things get collected, and then they have to be treated, detained, and treated and released at a certain level. And if you can explain a little bit more on that, what kinds of things and why that's important to our streams and our lakes.
I'm not sure if I can. You kind of summarized it there, so without knowing what you're referring to.
So basically, every new residential subdivision has what we call a stormwater facility. Those stormwater facilities have to be maintained, and they have to, for instance, nitrates. They're required to eliminate or reduce nitrates to a level that's already established by the state. So there's these documents, and so every permit that goes through and every new development, that is the case. I believe it to be very accurate what you were saying about Lacamas Lake and the rural county and the drainage that comes in from and all the cattle and the fertilizers and all those things that come down Lacamas Creek into the lake, and that has been a problem for years and years. As new development goes on, there's have been increasing regulations on how it gets released. So the water that should be hitting there is supposed to be at a safe level.
We had another question right here.
So first of all, a comment on that SEPA program. We only have it open for 14 days for comment once a committee member. I just wanted to ask if there's some way we can expand that to 21. I've done some research at local cities, and it's not uncommon to put 21-day response as opposed to 14, because in many cases when you hit a weekend, you have 9 days, and most people can't organize 9 days to respond to a SEPA. But my more specific question is, I understand that we're looking to get an employee that will be an urban forester locally for Camas. Is this correct? Yes. We're looking to, Robert said that. Robert, where are you?
No, I'll talk to that. I'll talk to that. That is something that has been discussed at the city level for some time now. It's something that the community development staff supports. Council has had discussions, but they've been trying to work through how they prioritize the hiring of different departments, and still maintaining a budget, and as part of budget discussions, trying to figure out what an appropriate time, and is that a priority over other needs. And so that's something that will continue to be discussed. I would anticipate it'll be discussed further this year.
I would guess with the North Shore, I think it's appropriate and it's important because we're not capable, even as individual city managers, to navigate all of the federal laws and rules and regulations associated with environmental management. And I mean, even our local policies, our tree ordinance and stuff, have big gaping holes in them. So I think that our community as a whole is going to benefit from someone who understands legally from up high and federally an urban forester to help us with this process. So I think with the North Shore, this invites, right, the opportunity to get a knowledgeable person in that spot.
So your voice is being heard, and there's many council members in the room as well. So.
You have questions, so I'm going to work my way over this way. How about that?
My question is how is the city going to handle the construction of the roundabout without seriously impacting traffic by the lake?
That's a good question. We actually addressed that at the last public meeting we had for the roundabout. We have a 3-stage plan to do so. Start building the roundabout is actually outside of the current roadway. So in different stages, we keep the roadway open and keep traffic moving. So we do have a plan for that. Appreciate your question.
I'm wondering what your plans for the Ledbetter House are, and if you're going to close that road, are you allowing access to that private home that's in there, a launching ramp, and the Ledbetter House?
Jerry, you want to come up here for a second? Jerry Atchison's our parks manager. He has a little background on the Ledbetter House. I can't answer part of the road itself. We are planning on having it closed off so we can certainly navigate the lake at some point with the trail network all the way around, but only until such time that we're able to have some sort of a parallel road to allow access for all the people that still live up there, and that we do need that full circulation.
We are currently going through a Legacy Lands master plan for that area, and currently we are looking at closing the road at where's the boat launch? Wildlife Lake? There, and also at where the new school is, there's a property down below, so it'd be 2 ending points right in that area. Ledbetter House. We're starting to look at the potential uses from bed and breakfast to an event center, and we're starting to go through that process also. The Parks and Recreation Commission will be studying that throughout the next 2 or 3 months, I would imagine.
My question revolves around the activity that we did, and how did you decide on all the Post-its, the categories, and also because I was a woman, or are you, with the hat, the green hat. I loved her idea about incorporating smaller farms or a winery or something like that, and a bed and breakfast, and make it sort of like the North Shore would be like a destination kind of area to play off of the natural beauty that Camas has, and the lakes, and the recreation. So where would her idea, there's no category in those Post-its to address her fabulous idea. So how would that play into the development of the North Shore?
Well, so the answer to one of the questions, how to distribute the Post-it notes, was based on the current zoning. It was a rough estimate of how much land is allocated to each zone now. And then looking at our first major problem statement where we mentioned that the city now owns land that's currently residential and currently commercial, and so we're asking for you to help us redistribute it. And then part of that exercise allowed you to trade in some of those sticky notes for something else. And then also roaming around, I guess I probably should have mentioned that if you had some out-of-the-box ideas, we were definitely open to them. And so I stopped by the table and we were discussing their idea. I said, write it down, let us, consider it as a group.
I think part of that answer too is that when you actually look at our zoning ordinance that we use to implement the current zoning regulations that we have uses in there, like bed and breakfasts are allowed, cottage developments are allowed, kind of cool little kitschy urban farmer might even be something we could put into like a master plan development. It's a lot of that gets into the design element to it. We do have some tools in the toolkit already that enable some of that kind of growth or development pattern if we get some creative developers at the table. Part of it, we may have it ready for folks, we just can't always make people use all the things that are available. It's a sausage-making process with a subdivision, for instance, if they want to achieve a particular density, but they're required to have some open space and trails. We do our best to try to get the trail connections. But as Sarah said too, it's good to get some of these out-of-the-box thinking ideas too, because that's why we go through this, is to help. It's an evolution constantly with our code and our comprehensive plan.
I have a question about the community center plan that was scrapped with the last election. And if that idea is completely dead, or if it's something that the city is thinking about and wants to bring back, and also if that's the case and they are still thinking about putting a community center up, is it possible to integrate it into the North Shore plan and create a community center that has dual purpose, as serving the PUD development of the master plan village, as well as the community center? So part of the cost can be absorbed by the developer, and it cannot be as much of a burden on the city, the rest of the city taxpayers, possibly. Is that an option?
Well, there's no current plan right now for like a plan B, if you will, for a community center. What we do have, so what we're doing right now under community development, we look at our comprehensive planning and land use side of what we need to do for the city. We also have a parks department. So Jerry Atchison, who was just up here, he also has a parks master plan. Similar, he's gone through similar exercises to create that, design threads, things like that. That's what helps enable doing a community center. But that's at the discretion of the council wanting to move forward with that as a project that the community might want. Now, can something like that be integrated into a big master plan? Sure. I mean, we've talked to developers about integrating all kinds of different things, like Woodburn Elementary as a result of working with the developers on a big master plan for mixed density development out there. So you got the land for the schools, there's mixed densities out there with housing, large lot, small lot, medium size, and then there's also trails throughout there, and it connects to the county parks right behind it. Could something similar be done with that for a community center? Sure, but there are no current discussion points on that right now. No.
One of the things that we have done as the Parks Commission, we've asked them to come up with a strategy and come up with some different ideas. And the idea is that sometime in the summer, ideally, we'll have different groups that can put together different ideas that would incorporate different ideas. Maybe it is through the North Shore, maybe it's in different locations, but coming up with some different concepts that can be presented then, and it's a way that as a community we kind of take a look, ask questions, and really kind of get some different options and thinking outside the box and really engaging people to come up with those ideas, because I think there's a lot of different good ideas out there that we can utilize.
So just want to acknowledge staff gets a lot done, and obviously in a presentation like this, you saw there were kind of 10-minute chunks of information we had to get into. Talking about something as complex as the GMA, there's a lot of moving parts in that, and the do their best to serve the task of the evening and get us caught up for what feels relevant. But I just wanted to kind of challenge my neighbors and all of us to kind of do a little bit of homework on the GMA itself and just kind of let it inform any thinking you do around this effort, good, bad, or indifferent. But there's 14 points mentioned more than once in the GMA, but those haven't shown up in a slide that I've seen. And if you look at those are very simple. It's a great entry point into that document. And one of them, for instance, it was 13 points. It turned into 14, and the 14th was shoreline management protection, right? And we definitely have some thinking to do around that. There's things about, a work-play balance, which kind of serves maybe more of a downtown development than this. The other thing I wanted to just, again, have us all hopefully think about and mention out loud was, as I understand it, the GMA is something we need to satisfy to qualify for a select group of grants. But that is a county-wide responsibility. It's not just a Camas responsibility. I've also never seen that mentioned in our discussions here. So I'd like us all to kind of consider as we go down the path. I know that all this is done with best intention, and there's a goal to each individual task. But in the big picture, we can always kind of slow down and ask ourselves, does this have to happen now, in this place, at this pace? Thanks.
Those are some good points, actually, and what I think it's important to key out for that too. Just like tonight being recorded, all the other meetings that we've had about the North Shore have also been recorded and are available. And at some points we've talked about some of those other elements, but you're right, it's tough to cover all those things every single night. Last Thursday was the Growth Management Short course we hosted over at the Lodge. And as was mentioned earlier tonight, it was a long evening, but it's worth going through because there's a lot to cover on that. I mean, it's easy for us to kind of digest this and go out and recite a lot of this because I've been doing this for 20 years. Sarah's been doing this for 20 years. Curly's been doing this a lot longer than that. So, but and city staff is available. Our preference is to make sure that you all understand and feel comfortable with what we're talking about on long-range planning and current planning. There is a difference between the two. The long-range planning is what we're doing now. The current planning is when the houses go up. How did that subdivision get approved? That particular process too. And it's complicated, but we're here as a resource.
Sorry, just one direct question to follow up. Am I correct in that assumption that GMA is a county-wide responsibility? It's Clark County that we opted into. It's not just something that Camas has to do to satisfy.
It is a we solution. So Clark County and the cities within it need to plan together. The county has their own countywide planning policies they adopt. They have been great about bringing the cities to the table and coordinating those efforts. Our comprehensive plan also needs to be consistent. Because the idea is that if the county is engaging in some planning and it's going to eventually be absorbed by whether it's Vancouver, Ridgefield, Battleground, Camas, Washougal, what have you, we don't want a bunch of inconsistencies either. We have regular meetings with them quarterly.
A lot of coordination. A lot of coordination. And it's a lot about coordination with the roads and capacity between cities and how we can get freight here and there and people. So it's a lot of coordination when it comes to Growth Management Act as well.
No, I don't have a question. I have a statement I'd like to make, a couple of them. One is, I've been working with the City of Camas and the Camas staff for maybe 15 or 20 years. We were involved as a group with bringing the North Shore into Camas, getting it annexed. And I don't think a lot of people there appreciate just how much the staff and the city's done to create a vision and create an actual opportunity to save the North Shore of the lake, and how much they've done already. I think that you, way beyond most areas that I've been involved with development with, have done a good job of doing a good job of saving things. The other thing I'd like to say, though, on the opposite side of the coin is there's been a lack of discussion, probably because of the vote on the pool and the fear everybody has of, where they are now with the public outcry. but I think there's been a lack of discussion, and it should be thought of by everyone, about private property rights of people like the Johnsons and the Mills, who've actually worked with the city for years and been a part of this plan, and have a comprehensive plan already approved that went through 10 years of work, and have their lives untold while people are told you can go claim what they own. If somebody came to your house and said, you know, I don't like the way your bathroom is, we're going to change that, and so I'm going to use it myself, you wouldn't like that. So I think there's a cooperative, a very cooperative situation, and you've got a great group of leaders, but I think there needs to be more discussion of what these people have right now in the way of property rights. The GMA addresses that, and it addresses it specifically, and it's not the blank slate you're being told about right now, I don't think.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. Looks like we have a line.
First off, I'd like to thank the city for hosting this workshop. Our table enjoyed it, and we really have the impression that you all do care what we think. And I've never had the impression otherwise. You guys are certainly available when we want to talk, and it really does feel like you genuinely care. Now my question is on funding for purchasing green space. Do we have a certain amount of funding allocated specifically for that? If so, how much? And the second part of that would be, have there been options explored to increase that funding? Because it seems like the general theme is most people want to preserve the green space and want the city to protect the natural areas. So I'm wondering if that's been discussed, if alternative funding has been discussed, you know, maybe a bond or some other way where we can possibly reduce the commercial and some of the undesirable elements that would come with the development.
Good question. Jerry's come up here to help answer that.
We do have funding in place thanks to council and the mayor's leadership. We are out actively pursuing those properties. We have roughly 60% of them completed. We have 2 properties left to acquire. And I think all told, it'll be around 17 million, is what I think it is. And we received a grant for 2.6 million from Conservation Futures. And we have 2 other opportunities, 2020 and 2022, for a recreation and conservation funding. And so we're pursuing those.
Do we have any other questions?
So at our table tonight, we had a great time doing this exercise, by the way, and at our table, we were frustrated by the fact that we had to place all of the stickies. We didn't want to place all of the stickies. But we understand why we have to place all the stickies, because the stickies is what gets us to GMA compliance, the stickies is what gets us to a tax revenue base that allows us to pay for the things we want, and that all comes by a certain number of homes and businesses and all of that. But we didn't want to place all the stickies inside that green area. But we did. And unfortunately, our map did not represent what we wanted. Our map would have represented what we wanted had the instructions and the rules of the exercise been to place however many stickies you want wherever you want on the map. That would have then reflected exactly what we wanted the North Shore to look like. So I think that it's this balance. It's having we had to place all of the stickies is the frustrating part. And so my question is that we have 3 other sub-area plans that are in our master plan. And we wanted to place the blue stickies out in Grass Valley, in that sub-area. And we wanted to place the high-density apartment complex stickies in the downtown sub-area, because we thought that was the best place for those. And so I just wonder, and I know you got to pick one, but do we have to pick one? And what was the process that was used to pick this one instead of opening it up to where we could develop some things in this area and some things in this area and some things in the North Shore? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. A series of questions, really. So in 2016, when we adopted the comprehensive plan, there were the 4 sub-area plans that you referenced. We actually did start looking at Grass Valley right off the bat, because that has been sort of the general area where we've had a lot of our economic development over the last several decades. Predominantly what's not built, a lot of the stuff that's available is owned by just a few property owners. And we talked to those property owners, and they didn't want to participate in the sub-area plan. Could the city do a sub-area plan without their permission? Sure. But it doesn't really lend for a good partnership and relationship long-term as we see it. And the other challenge with the Grass Valley area on the lowland areas, it's pretty wet. And we've known that for some time now. Can wetlands be developed? Yes. But it's a complicated layered process that involves the state and federal government, and it's just not something we were going to be engaging in. So the other 3 sub-areas, downtown, North Shore, third. From downtown, when we started talking about, we had 2 choices. We were thinking, well, we could either do a sub-area plan downtown or one in North Shore. We were on the heels of losing out on, as a city-wide, 2 big economic development opportunities out in North Shore by the Johnson Dairy to Vancouver. That would have been good, clean industry and good paying jobs. But they had mentioned to us we weren't ready in terms of infrastructure planning and things like that. Around the same time, the Downtown Association was blessed with having the energy of Main Street, the USA, where they come in and bring in some small town, thank you. And we missed out on it just by a hair, right? But there's a lot of really cool things going on downtown today. Thriving businesses, a variety of shops and restaurants, offices, all kinds of things. And of course the mill, right? You've got all of those lands around there that can do, from a geeky planner perspective, it'd be kind of cool to be able to plan on some of that. But again, that gets into that relationship side. The mill doesn't want us to plan for them right now. And then so it was about, there was a discussion with council this time last year on what do we do? Do we do the North Shore or the downtown? It was a tough decision, but ultimately it was chosen to do the North Shore, in part because of what we were just talking about with our parks acquisitions. The city purchasing that kind of land is literally putting our money where our mouth is in terms of open space preservation, but it takes those numbers that we planned for in 16 off the table. We can't then consider that to be right for residential development. We could wait for the 2024 update to reallocate those numbers, but that in concert with trying to dovetail in better transportation planning or more fine-tuned transportation planning in the area, we figured a sub-area plan is a good tool for that. And to paint the map green where we have bought open space to preserve. And the school district also bought that 40 acres too, so they have preserved areas out there. Could we do 2 at once? Yes, but it's all about funding and staff resources. Sarah is the long-range planner for the community. In fact, we've just reorganized how our planning works. So I'm the planning manager Robert Mall, by the way. I didn't introduce myself when I came up here, sorry. Sarah Fox, senior planner, Lauren Holmbeck, senior planner, and Madeline Sutherland is assistant planner. That's it. To do a sub-area plan in and of itself is pretty labor-intensive and time-consuming and expensive. That's not the only thing on our plate that we have to do for long-range planning. We also have to do our shorelines update. Goal number 14. The state says, city, you got to update your shorelines plan. We're also doing, Sarah was awesome at getting grants, still continues to do that. She got us some grant funding to do a housing study, market housing study, to look at affordable housing issues. So that's another thing that we're going to be doing this year. So that it was a choice that council made. We could do one, so we did one. That doesn't mean we can't do another sub-area plan. So there's a lot kind of in the decision-making process on that.
looks like what?
I didn't want to interrupt you just in the middle
Oh.
of thought, but I was just going to say, I neglected to mention that we actually only have this space until 9 o'clock, and I fear that we're overrunning 9 o'clock tonight, so our building supervisor probably wants to go home too, so I'm not sure how we want to, how many more minutes we have, and I was going to go looking for it, but I didn't notice what time it was, so.
Well, I think I'd like to try to get through questions too, so I want to balance this a little bit. I want to address that question just a little more clearly. So with all those, with each of those little stickies that were given, there was not a specific density allocation or a specific job number allocation. It just kind of represented an interest or an area, and not a geographic area, just an area of housing would be over here, this would be over here. Those deeper dives come in through the vision. All land has capacity, and what I mean by that is there's capacity in terms of there's wetlands out in that area, there's significant trees, and we have to plan for water, sewer, and all those things, and you have to figure out the funding on how that's going to happen. And all that drives capacity and are part of capacity discussions. Those are things that we get into as we continue on a path with that. And then we develop regulations, standards, things like that to protect your open spaces, integrate them into those areas and those kinds of things. So try to address it a little better. Is there any other questions before we try to close up? John?
Maybe 2 last questions. Is that all right, everyone? You know, we're all available. You can call us on the phone too tomorrow as well if you had a question that you really wanted.
So my question is, the city talked about we own already 200 some odd acres, I think, out of the 800 acre North Shore greater area or something like that. What did we pay for that? And you probably don't have the answer and you have to research that. But the concept I'd like citizens to consider as a businessman, I think I came in and started looking at this as we got this, what do we want to do with it? Let's say in round numbers, to build another road, it's going to cost us $10 million before we can shut off Ledbetter. That's a very expensive walking and biking path. Nothing wrong with that, but all we have then is the biking path. In reality, besides the road, we're going to have to build sewer, water, a whole host of things that developers will come. Is it possible for us to consider selling off some parts of some of the land we've already bought at a profit to help fund some of the rest of the development and the parks and the things that we want there, and therefore reducing the burden on property taxpayers in the long run?
And that question is out there, so it's been heard.
Yeah, so this is probably for the fellow from the Parks District. I think there has been a pet project I've been working on now for a couple of months. It was uncovered. We have a way to get more money outside of grants, outside of levies, outside of property taxes. We have a way to get more money to preserve land, to put land into preservation and permanent perpetuity. And that is a gap that we're missing here in Camas, and that would be a local land trust. So I looked at Columbia, our big one. We're at the fringes of their area of interest, and they only want to work with large lots that are biologically diverse. Fallen Leaf Lake, Camp Curry, Heritage Trail, they've done great work for us. If we had a local land trust, it was a 501c3, that would enable citizens at their tax return to donate money into that land trust, and the money from that land trust is used to buy green space. And the other advantage to us having our own land trust, and I have it on my folder, Clackamas Land Trust, I've even given it a name already. The other advantage to that is there's significant tax advantages to those people who choose to donate their land to the city and to the land trust. So right now, if somebody wanted to donate 5 acres, 10 acres, 15 acres, we have no place for them to donate this land to the city. We have no vehicle or means. Now, the way the land trust works, and I've spoken to 12 of them in Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, the way the land trust works is an owner, including a developer who has just purchased 40 acres, he can literally take a section of that land, donate it to the land trust. Maybe that section is a forest, I don't know. And he can get tax breaks. So, I mean, we're missing a big opportunity by not having a local land trust to get money and to preserve more green space. So I'll help you build it. I mean,
That's another one where it's a comment and an idea, and you just share it, it's being heard. So, is there any last closing questions? And if not, we'll end it on that, and I thank everybody for their time this evening.
Okay.